Hey everybody, welcome back to the Big Llama Show. I'm the Big Llama. Got a retro review for you. Gonna do it a little bit differently. Instead of breaking down one retro movie, I'm gonna break down three. Stay tuned. Karate Kid, the series 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna break them down right now. Yo, SINA, hit me with my theme music.
Yeah, it's SINA. She ruckus. That beat, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. You ain't a killer, boy, stop. I hear you yelling stacks on deck.
Once again, welcome back to the Big Llama Show. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you give a like and subscribe before we get to my retro review on the Karate Kid series. Give a like, comment, subscribe. Join the Llama Nation. It's free to join. You'll be made alerted when I post new videos. I try to post at least a video once a week. I'm a working dad, so it's a little tough to do more than one, but I'll do my best to get as many out there as quickly as I can. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so that we can do some nice things with this channel. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now let's get to the retro review, the Karate Kid series. Okay, the Karate Kid series. So I recently got the Blu-rays of the Karate Kids 1, 2, and 3. And now having watched Cobra Kai, which I love Cobra Kai, and I'll talk about that at another time. Having watched Cobra Kai, the experience of rewatching the Karate Kid series is way, way different. So let's start first at, let's start first at this. The Blu-rays copies don't do the quality justice. I know there's a 4K version of the original Karate Kid that is just released not too long ago, and I'm sure the quality is better. But unfortunately, the Blu-ray versions of these movies, they didn't do a whole lot to improve the image. Yes, it was upscaled to 1080p for the Blu-ray, but there was nothing spectacular about it. So if we're looking strictly from a how does it look on Blu-ray, it does look substantially better than your DVD or the VHS copies if you have them. But again, it's not anything spectacular. But again, the physical media is what I love, and being able to pop in the Blu-rays to watch these movies was great. I rewatched these with my son, who watched Cobra Kai with me, and what I'll tell you is it is definitely a different viewing experience. All right, let's start with the original Karate Kid, the one that started it all. My son and I, as we watched it, we jokingly said that, look, Johnny's not such a bad guy overall, but that's because we now have the hindsight of the Cobra Kai series, and that's the one thing I probably have failed to do for my son, is let him watch the Karate Kid movies first, and then watch the Cobra Kai series. Unfortunately, we did it the other way around. We watched Cobra Kai first, or he watched Cobra Kai first, and now he's watching it. So the Johnny Lawrence character, to him, is a sympathetic character. He doesn't feel that Johnny Lawrence necessarily is the bad guy, like an instant bad guy. Back in the 80s when we watched this movie, the original Karate Kid, you knew Johnny Lawrence was the bad guy. You didn't really question it. But now looking at it, Daniel LaRusso coming into the movie really does a number on Johnny's girlfriend and sort of just starts taking over. And again, this was the fan theory, I think, that was put out there on YouTube long ago, and not that it's the basis for Cobra Kai, but it's really sort of bringing it back to Johnny Lawrence's story. But let's keep it as a whole. It does change your experience, but the movie itself is great. The scenes are still really good. I remember the scenes the way I did. The one thing that was questionable, obviously, was Johnny smoking a joint during the Halloween party at the school. I thought it was such a bigger, nefarious scene that I'd have to say something to my kid, but it's such a quick, sort of glance over that they don't really spend a lot of time in there. Though, as I'm rewatching the movie, is that Mr. Miyagi, who again, I took that character for granted when I first watched it. I didn't know Pat Morita's history, and I didn't know of the different things that he's done prior to the Karate Kid. I thought that he was just perfect casting, but if you recognize the things that he's done before, and then you see him in the movie, you really sort of see why he was nominated. I think he was nominated for an Oscar for the first movie, and then he plays a bigger role in part 2. The climax of the movie is still a great climax. The building up to the tournament is great. Kreese, who is Mark Cove, you know, he's still the big baddie, and I think that's what was missed in this movie. Is you think Johnny Lawrence is the big baddie, but it really is Sensei Kreese, and Kreese in the movie is the ruthless character. Even some of the other Cobra Kais, with the exception of the one Cobra Kai Dutch, who is not featured in the Cobra Kai series, they're all pretty sympathetic and are decent people. They're sorry when they hurt Daniel LaRusso. In the tournament, the one guy who hurts the leg is really, really sorry. And I think what was great is that, knowing what he turns into, he becomes a preacher in the Cobra Kai series, you really sort of see the compassion there. And you see that these were just misguided kids. So again, changes the whole experience of the movie. Now, I will say the crane kick is iconic, and I love the fact that it's, it still gives me goosebumps to see that, and then you hear that music build up, and then the ending. But the crane kick was a bit weak. Johnny could have just blocked it like Chozen did in part 2. Or he did, again, this is just me overanalyzing it. As you're watching him set up the crane kick, Johnny's kind of just waiting for it to hit his face. And something I didn't realize when I was a kid, when you're watching it as a youth, you're building up to the moment, you're listening to the music, you're all fired up, and you don't realize that Johnny just walked right into that crane kick. But again, I digress. I don't want to look at this in old eyes. I want to look at it with a movie lover's eyes. And I tell you, the movie's still great, still holds up today. Loved it from beginning to end. Let's talk about something that I didn't like about the Karate Kid series moving forward. I love that in part 2, there was a recap, a recap of what happened at the end. And the one thing I did is I watched these back to back. So we watched them in a span over a day and a half. We watched Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3. And if you look at the recap in part 2 and in part 3, it's the same recap. They didn't even spend any money on changing the story or changing your mind. They just told you the same recap in both movies. And I realized they're about 2 to 3 years apart as they filmed them, but that was a little annoying to me. But I only realized it as I was watching them, as I was binging them with my son. So again, that's the one thing I have to say is I didn't really like. Now, I always thought that Karate Kid 2 was a really, really good movie, and I still think it's a decent flick. I just wasn't as impressed with it in its second viewing. Not second viewing, I've seen it like 6 or 7 times. I'm talking about in this latest iteration, in this latest binging. It just didn't stick out to me. It was a little bit slow. Chozen, who I love in the movie, is the standout in the movie. He is the scene stealer. My son loved his style in the movie, and the way he looked and the way he sort of interacted, but he was very, very, I think, underused in the movie. The one thing I couldn't get past was Mr. Miyagi's nemesis, Sato. Sato had this voice, Miyagi, he would just keep doing that same voice. And then what I couldn't help but laughing is that anytime something was going well, then you hear Sato in the background, Miyagi, and it was like, come on, it was annoying. And then Sato forgot his accent or forgot that voice somewhere in the middle of the movie, and then he brought it back. And so that was a little bit comical. The fight sequence at the end and getting to the ending was a little slow. So again, I'm looking at this from old eyes, and I wasn't as impressed as I think I would have been in the rewatching. 2 still a great movie, but again, getting to the climax of the movie, it became very formulaic. And what my son realized, and this is why I watch it with my kids, because I get a different perspective, is the formula was used in part 1. Daniel arrives somewhere new, finds a girlfriend, and then something happens to that girlfriend. Part 2, he breaks up with the other girlfriend off screen, something happened, we don't know. Finds a new girlfriend, and then ends the movie. And then when you start part 3, girlfriend is gone, finds a new one. Although in the third one, it wasn't really his girlfriend, it was just a friend. She put him in the friend zone, which I thought was interesting, and I didn't realize it was his friend, but she definitely friend zoned him in part 3. Part 3, this one has Terry Silver, and I forgot the other guy's name, but I believe Terry Silver is going to make a return in the new season of Cobra Kai, which should be very interesting. What I didn't realize from my old viewing to this viewing is Terry Silver is nothing but pure overacting cheese. And his laugh, he's like a hyena laugh, and he's over the top, and his drama. I mean, even the emphasis on that he's a very rich guy was way overdone. Obviously, 1 is the superior one, 2 is mediocre, and 3 was kind of terrible. But it was still something that I had to watch with my kids because we wanted to sort of finish out the series. But yeah, it was comical. Kreese is there and then he's gone. And I would have loved to see Kreese more in part 3 because it really is his story of revenge. And I would have liked to have seen him interact more. Probably would have made for a better movie. But Terry Silver hams it up. He is over the top. He takes on Daniel, and Daniel, for the first time, becomes a Cobra Kai. And when I said that to my son, he didn't believe me, and it was part of the Cobra Kai series. He sort of didn't understand it, but yeah, he became a Cobra Kai and was trained in properly. Here's another thing I noticed, and this is again old eyes looking at the movies. Daniel put on some weight between 2 and 3, and I'm the big llama. I'm not one to talk. I'm hefty myself, but you can tell. And then Daniel had those old 80s jeans. Daniel had those mom jeans. Don't believe me? Go back and rewatch it. Now again, I watched it in a row, so it was relatively fresh. But yeah, from the first one, first of all, let's address this. Daniel LaRusso had this awkward body. He was like a little skinny thing up top and like big legs at the bottom, and he just never sort of fit the mold of an athlete. But yeah, between 2 and 3, it looked like Daniel was putting on a little bit of some pounds, and it showed in his performance. But yeah, you can see his definite 80s mom jeans, and that just was terrible. All right, so much like the first one, they went back to the All Valley tournament, and what I found very, very disappointing in the third one is that Daniel's essentially getting his butt kicked throughout the whole tournament. He didn't have to do anything, and that was another thing. He didn't have to do anything but show up to the tournament and play and fight one match. It would have been nice to see that he's sort of developed as a fighter and seen him sort of move through the ranks. But I think for the plot device, they just sort of moved him along and said, hey, you're going to fight this guy. And it was set up and it was all there. Only thing the other guy had to do was just make it there, which you knew he was going to make it. In fact, they didn't spend a lot of time at the All Valley, which was the fun part of part 1. Anyway, the thing is, Daniel gets his ass kicked throughout the whole movie. I'm sorry, not the whole movie, but throughout the whole ending part. And then he throws one punch. So he's really losing the whole time. He's getting hit, points taken away. He does one punch, wins the tournament. End of story. So it was a little disappointing, anticlimactic. But again, that's what happens when you rewatch some of these things. Now, when I was a kid watching it, I was excited. I was, it was cool. He beat Terry. He beat, he beat Kreese. But it just didn't live up. Didn't pay off in this last viewing. One thing I sort of glossed over is in part 2, Miyagi becomes a central part of the movie, and I think that's why it was a development for Mr. Miyagi. It was less about Daniel, more about him, but they had to keep inserting Daniel into the movie. 3 could have had some great character development between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi as their relationship was becoming very rocky. But it stayed to the formula. It stayed formulaic, and I guess it made money because they kept doing it. Unfortunately, I wish they would have explored that a little bit more. The scenes where they're mountain climbing or they're those are a little bit silly and ridiculous. And the fact that Daniel was outside of his character, taking what was Mr. Miyagi's to sell it to help Mr. Miyagi. It wasn't in his character. It looked like a very just sort of lazy writing in that regard. So if I'm going to give each of these movies its individual rating, here's how I would do it. For the first Karate Kid, that one's an A. I'll give that one an A. It was the original that started it all. It's not a perfect movie, but because of its because it's iconic and because it's a well-known movie, it gets that A rating. Now, is it the most perfect movie? I'm sure there are better movies that I've rated a lot lower, but it gets an A in my book. Part 2. C-. It does miss the mark a little bit. There are things that they could have done better. Chozen is a great character, but C- for Karate Kid Part 2. As far as Part 3, that one gets a D. like I said, it's overdone. The villain in this one is very over the top. They got away from what was the heart of the movie and just really stuck to the formula, and unfortunately it didn't work. And the guy who he's fighting, I think is Mike Barnes, he just was forgettable. He was just a guy who was angry and for no reason other than to get revenge. It wasn't even his revenge. It was just because he was being used to get percentages of the Cobra Kai dojo. So again, that one gets a D. All right, everyone. I encourage everyone to get physical media. You know, doing something like this was really fun, especially sharing it with my kids. Revisiting the movies and having them ask the questions sort of really brings back those memories for me, the questions that I had when I was a kid. And I love infusing small bits of trivia into that viewing experience with my kids. So this was just a really fun time. Again, this is my retro review for Karate Kids 1, 2, and 3. All 3 of them. I didn't want to break them down because it'd be long videos. So this one is kind of long, but again, I just wanted to make sure I got everything in. All right, that's my review. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all the love and support. Make sure you join the Llama Nation. Make sure you like and subscribe. It's free. Once you subscribe, you'll find out all the times that I post videos. It's usually once a week, and we try to do retro videos, and we try to do retro movie reviews, and we try to do movie reviews of movies that are in the theaters. This is my retro review of Karate Kids 1, 2, and 3. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the love. I'm the Big Llama. Peace out.
Lately, I'd never lose you, baby. You're the one I keep as my prima donna, my only ruby. You are the one for me.
Yeah, I tell her, baby, you're the one for me. Never two unless you telling me you feel it too.